First, we are going to do our newsy news segment, though.
Yeah.
That's just where we throw out a couple news stories. Pastor Tom, feel free to jump in and comment. We might even throw it over to you. But, Jason, you want to do something?
Let's go.
News, the news, the newsy news, the news, the news, the news. We got some news!
Nothing like having someone on like Pastor Tom Ascol, and then he has to sit through that intro.
I know, right?
You know, we just like to bring you down a few notches, you know?
Can I comment on the intro? Or is that off limits?
you could if you want.
He said, can I comment on the You need to change that.
Are we predestined because he foreknew who would accept him?
I almost said a bad word. In fact, I'm still tempted. I don't want to just say no. I want to say heck no.
I think we understand.
My favorite line in Monty Python's
Steady,
Holy Grail.
Steady.
Is where the one priest says to the other as he's reading, "Skip a bit, brother."
Yeah, skip a bit, brother.
And sometimes we need to skip along a bit and not get sucked up. Unlikely quotes, I recognize. But
Jonathan, could I just move from Monty Python to John Calvin again?
I remember my son Mark one day sat down in the bed with me and he said, "Dad," he said, "you know, I don't understand you." He was a teenager. I said, "Really, what is it?" He said, "You know, when you get in the pulpit and preach, you are really something, but the rest of the time, you're not really very special at all." He was absolutely dead serious.
A lot of us have noticed that about you.
But, I remember when I met my wife, the first date I had with her was to take her to go hear a certain preacher, and if she liked him, she'll love me. And if she didn't like him, there wasn't much hope for this relationship. And I wasn't the preacher, but...
Try and do an Irish accent because we're folks here from Ireland. But he said to me, you pastors are like dung. He said, like dung. And so the minister said, "Well, in what way?" He said, when dung is spread evenly over a wide space, it's tremendously helpful. But when you get a big pile of it together...
My wife grew up in a Presbyterian church, but it was a mainline Presbyterian church where they didn't believe anything. And in God's providence, she took a job, moved out of town, and moved to Orlando and took a job. And because she was in a mainline Presbyterian church, she didn't know there were different kinds of Presbyterian churches. She looked in the yellow pages. If you don't know what that is, ask your parents.
or grandparents.
And she found this Presbyterian church that turned out to be a Presbyterian church in America, a more conservative, Bible-believing Presbyterian church. She went that Sunday, and that Sunday there happened to be a guest preacher in the pulpit, and it wasn't you. But it was Dr. Sproul. And she actually liked what she heard and thought to herself, "I wonder if he has a son."
Are you making this up?
No, it's a true story.
Question was prompted by someone who wanted to know, should I continue to stay in a church that has a woman as a pastor?
Well, that church has no pastor.
Now, not to press, but I have a similar question.
You know, there's water here. I can get rid of you.
And why would he do that? Because love is audacious.
Is there an angel standing behind me singing? Whoever is in charge of, please shut that guy off. He's still going.
2,000 years later.
Tom Clay's a really small guy. Is he hiding up there somewhere? Someone says, oh, Brother Paul, you shouldn't have done that. God was working, and he's heated, and now you've quit. Listen, if God's working, he'll continue to work when I get back to this sermon, okay? Someone told Spurgeon, you need to strike while the iron's hot. And Spurgeon said, well, if it's God heating up the iron, it'll stay hot. If that comes on again, I'm shooting somebody. Okay. Lord.
From a human standpoint, serendipitous was the fact that we met.
Exactly.
Right?
Well, in fact, I almost didn't
the fact
come
that
to
you
hear
put me in a motel in the dead winter of Chicago, a motel with no heat, and I had to take the carpet off the floor to put on the bed to stay warm all night.
Yeah. And then I booked you into a lousy accommodation in India once, too.
Thank you very much. On my anniversary.
That's right.
With my wife.
It was your 30th anniversary, no less, wasn't it? Yeah. And you talk about how serendipitous it was. I almost didn't come to hear you the first time you were at Moody.
No, I know that story.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was speaking at Moody. He was on the Moody Press, and he made a crack to somebody. I'm not going to go hear some lame brain talk about the will of God. Everybody that comes to Moody talks about the will of God. And then he had his eye on this. Never heard of me. Then he had his eye on this girl named Darlene. And she comes up to him and says, oh, Philip, would you like to come to chapel and hear John MacArthur? Oh, yes. Right?
That is exactly what happened.
Now, this question is specifically directed to Dr. Horton. Are you familiar with the theophostic prayer? And would you consider it a form of Gnosticism?
This is distinct from Theophan the Recluse?
From what?
Theophan the Recluse?
I don't know. I've never heard of the theophostic prayer. I don't know what it's talking about.
Is this the Hesiatic group of Byzantine monks?
I have no idea.
Okay. Wow.
Is this from Theosophy or not?
No, this is
Gregory Palamas.
I wasn't asked the question.
Do you think it's talking about Gregory Palamas and so
No,
forth?
I think it's talking about the modern movement that emerged in some evangelical churches where it's known as theophostic prayer. And I think the answer to the Gnosticism is yes.
Okay. Then you answer it.
Thank you, Dr. Horton. Yeah, I can't answer these questions when I don't know what they mean.
I have no idea.
Before we move too far away from the question about women, here's another question. This is the last one, I promise, but I'm just giving you the ones that came in.
No, I know. You're not responsible for any of this, Phil.
Now, what if your pastor affirms all of those things, at least gives lip service to it, but she's a woman who believes...
Well, that isn't even there's no discussion there because the Bible couldn't be more clear on that. I permit not a woman to teach or take authority over a man. That's end of case. Look, there are 66 books, but you know this, don't you, Phil?
I do. I do. You want me to bail you out here?
No. One book called The Hungry Inherit said, you'll get there, but you won't inherit. There'll be like a ghetto in heaven for non-lordship people.
We call that ghetto hell.
Huh?
We call that ghetto hell.
You call that ghetto hell. I know. I understand that.
You managed to get that word in there. I'm very proud of you.